All right, so we are back, and I guess with what we have done, and considering with the Oscar theme, I guess for our next story, or at least the next discussion that we will have, might as well go and give it a proper introduction. And so, the winner for Best Animated Feature at this year's Oscars is The Boy and the Heron. Yes, it was The Boy and the Heron that was this year's big animation winner at the Oscars, or the winner for Best Animated Feature. And it did manage to beat out the other competition, which I will say was definitely a fierce year, in which the movie did manage to beat out Elemental, Nimona, Robot Dreams, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And beforehand, I would just want to go and quickly comment about the way the Oscars handled the animation category, because I know it was a massive discussion, and from what I've heard, apparently, like, the Twitter people have been talking about it a lot, and oh boy, did they flip their lid about some of the things that have occurred. Like, number one, there was the whole gag related to Jimmy Kimmel, where before getting into it, he would do this one little gag of like, oh, okay, so how many of you let your kids vote for Best Animated Feature? And I know that really did upset a lot of people there. But I will say that for me, like, I'm not too bothered by it, because I could tell, like, that was actually a bit of, like, a funny little slam on how they would go and vote at the Oscars. I know, like, like, at first it might seem like something that would just insult the integrity of animation or whatever, but, like, honestly, I could see how there is, like, a bit of a satire and kind of, like, poking fun of themselves of the way they would try to handle animation at the Oscars and stuff. So I just want to go in and quickly mention that. But I will say, like, the fact that it was one of the first, like, straight after the first category with Best Supporting Actress, they jumped straight into animation, and like, that thing felt like they just went through it so quickly. In fact, it is weird because it's one of the rare occasions in which Best Animated Short ended up receiving so much more time than Best Animated Feature. And I mean, we all know why at this point. It's mainly because of the fact that Hayao Miyazaki or Toshio Suzuki were not present at the Academy Awards. So when the winner was announced, it's almost at the point where they jumped straight into the commercial, like, it's The Boy and the Heron! Okay, now tune in next time, or after the break, we're gonna go back and show you the other categories, and that was pretty much it. So yeah, it was like a little weird moment, maybe not the best time to shine for animation at the Oscars, but yeah, like, either way, though, there is a part of it where they just had to work with what they can, considering that, well, the main person who made The Boy and the Heron was not there. And I know that throughout this whole thing, we know that it was an intense battle. In fact, it was a very rare year at the Oscars in which the Best Animated Feature category was honestly unpredictable. It was a hard time to go and guess who would be the winner, because it was very much a massive head-to-head match against Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and The Boy and the Heron, especially when Spider-Verse was winning all the other awards, like all the regional critics awards. It won the Critics' Choice Awards, and we recently saw that it swept the Annie Awards. But then you would also have The Boy and the Heron, which not only did that one received its fair share of awards for Best Animated Feature, but on top of that, it also won some of the major ones, including the Golden Globe and the BAFTA. So it raises the question, how is it that The Boy and the Heron managed to win what is debatably the biggest one of them all? How did it win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature and not Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse? Well, in that regard, I actually came up with 3 theories as to why. 3 reasons as to why is it The Boy and the Heron turned out to be the big winner this year. Now, reason number 1 is because of Hayao Miyazaki. Okay, I heard something weird, but I think everything turned out to be okay. But anyways, reason number one is because of Hayao Miyazaki. The fact that it is from Hayao Miyazaki is a massive selling point, not just for the awards, but also for the movie itself. As you may know, the big marketing for The Boy and the Heron was the fact that it was Hayao Miyazaki's big comeback, in which after a decade since he created his last animated feature with The Wind Rises, he finally returned and he produced another masterpiece. That was the big selling point of The Boy and the Heron. And in that regard, it caught a lot of people's attention. In fact, that was a major reason as to why is it The Boy and the Heron itself was a massive success, especially with that big name that was attached to it, like Hayao Miyazaki. Like, I remember a while back, again, when I was talking with Rachel in regards to like all the animated features that was released back in 2023, she did raise a very interesting question that if it were not for Hayao Miyazaki, if we take out Hayao Miyazaki from the equation, would The Boy and the Heron have as much popularity, as much critical acclaim as it would now? And honestly, it is a very interesting choice because it's hard to really separate the factor of Hayao Miyazaki from this feature, especially when it presents itself as a very personal movie, that it is a semi-autobiographical feature in which Hayao Miyazaki kind of tells his life story, but through his fantastical filmmaking style. And not to mention also that Hayao Miyazaki right now is very old. Like, he is well into his 80s. And in that regard, a lot of people might be curious in terms of how long does Hayao Miyazaki have to live? So in that sense, they're pretty much like the Academy is just doing like a just in case kind of thing that, you know, it's not every day that we're going to have Hayao Miyazaki make a movie nowadays, so you might as well go and give him the awards as soon as you can, especially with The Boy and the Heron. Like, unfortunately, you never know if this may actually be his last feature. Like, I know he is working on one right now, but it's still going to be a bit of a mystery if he's going to live long enough to actually go and finish his next movie. It's kind of like a similar reason as to why John Williams received a nomination for his work on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I mean, the dude is already like, what, like 91 or 92 years old, so he won't have that much time to live, so might as well also give him some recognition. And that is in contrast to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, where, like, you're not necessarily too worried about the people, the people who produce and directed the movie, because you know they got plenty more features to come. Like, you know that with the directors like Justin K. Thompson, Joaquin Dos Santos, and Ken Powers, and even like the producers as well, like with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they're still going to be making movies. In fact, right now they're working on Beyond the Spider-Verse. So this is not only this is not the last time that we're going to see them making movies, and not the last time that we're going to see Spider-Verse. So there's not that big of a concern. But with Hayao Miyazaki, on the other hand, I mean, considering the absolute legend that this person is, as well as his age, that is a big contributing factor as to how he became the winner. And then there is reason number two. Now, this one is not necessarily towards the Boy and the Heron, but this is one that I would specifically aim towards Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And the big thing with number two is that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a sequel. Now, I know it sounds strange, but when you look at the past history of the Oscars, especially with the Best Animated Feature category, it does make a lot of sense. Because with the exception of the two Toy Story sequels, Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4, the Oscars never give a sequel the win for Best Animated Feature. I mean, we've seen it time and time again that an animated sequel would be nominated in that category. Rather it be features like, what we have seen this year with Across the Spider-Verse, or last year with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, or even something like Incredibles 2 or Ralph Breaks the Internet. Like, they would get nominated, but they would never go and win. Because usually with sequels, they would go and do the same thing that we have already seen before in the previous installment, or that at least most of it is kind of the same thing. And the same, and this might be like a controversial thing to say, but the same would go and apply to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, keep in mind, I love that movie. I do agree it's one of the best movies released in 2023, but a good chunk of it is elements that they have already done in the previous feature with Into the Spider-Verse. And considering that the Academy has already given an Oscar for Into the Spider-Verse, it would be a little bit like they're just kind of repeating themselves if they would go and suddenly give it to Across the Spider-Verse. So in that regard, that already kind of made it lost points. Not to mention that the Academy might not be big of a fan of Spider-Verse as much as, well, some others, or especially in terms of the internet. Because when you do look at how Spider-Verse was handled by the Academy, like, you probably recall earlier this year when the nominations were announced, it was surprising, not just of the fact that animation was not nominated in any other category this year, but also with Spider-Verse that it didn't receive some of the other nominations that you would go and expect. Where Across the Spider-Verse was not nominated for Best Score, where that score, even though it wouldn't regularly win, it was very competitive at all the other award ceremonies and all the other competitive award shows. And then there's also Best Visual Effects, where from time to time, it proved to be a legitimate competitor, even amongst like some of the other big visual effects movies like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or even Godzilla -1. But in that regard, though, like, the Academy just didn't really care. So in terms of that, it was already a bit of a clue in which Spider-Verse may not be the big winner at this year's Oscars. That, yeah, Miles got lucky the first time around, but he didn't with his second round. And again, like, going back to what I've stated before with the first reason, we know this is not going to be the last Spider-Verse movie. We know Beyond is going to be coming sometime soon this decade. So in that regard, it's not going to be, for the Academy, it's not something that they're going to massively miss if they don't give the Oscar to Across the Spider-Verse. But then there is the third reason. Reason number 3, and this one I just want to go and say right now is the biggest one, at least in my theory, and one that not many people would go and think or discuss about. And the big thing with my number 3 is the release date of The Boy and the Heron. Maybe you do recall this, but when is it that The Boy and the Heron came out back in 2023? Or specifically, when was the North American release? That's right. I just want to see if the chat... I'll give the time for the chat wall to go and answer that question. So I just want to see right here. Okay. Yep. Oh, I see. Yes. Okay, now it's starting to come in. That's right, folks. It came out in December. And that's a major thing. That is like a big indicator and like a big advantage that The Boy and the Heron had over Across the Spider-Verse. It was the fact that it was released late in the year. It was actually released very close to award season. And that is actually a major strategy that, I don't know if you have noticed, but many other Oscar bait movies would go and do. That, you know, like whenever there's like a big Best Picture movie that would come out, often, like not all the time, but usually they would go and put their release dates somewhere close to the holiday season, that they would release themselves either in Christmas or in somewhere in December or even in early January, so that they could stay fresh for the award season to come. That's the big goal that they want to try to go and establish, to make sure that, you know, for the voters, that they can have that memory be fresh, that they can actually recall about that experience that they just had, and that the wow factor could still be alive compared to if the movie would be released back in like April or something like that. And when you look at the best animated feature category, now I'm not saying that this would happen all the time. In fact, you probably do recall when Pixar was sweeping the Oscars for best animated feature again and again and again. I mean, that would technically prove my theory wrong, considering that they would stick to their release date, or usually stick to their release date in June. But in recent years, most of the animated features, or at least in terms of like I said, the winners in recent years, most of them, they were released at the end of the year. Case in point, The Boy and the Heron, that was released in December. Then you got last year with Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, in which that was released on Netflix in December. And then before that, you got Disney's Encanto, in which that was released in November, or at least theatrically it was released in November, but then it was released on Disney Plus in December, and that's when the popularity really boomed from there. So it technically still does count. And then, before that, you got Soul, which that was released on Christmas. And then, a little bit before that, you also got Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, in which that one was released in mid-December. And then even before that, you got Coco, in which that was actually released in November during American Thanksgiving. You see where I'm going with this? It's the fact that they were all released sometime at the end of the year and close to award season, so that the memory could be fresh, so that audiences and that the voters, they can actually remember what they went through with that feature, so that they could go and actually vote. I will even say right now, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse would have probably gotten a much stronger chance if that were released around the same time as what the first movie did. Like, if Across the Spider-Verse were to be released in mid-December, then it would have been a little bit more likely that it would have won some of the big awards, such as the Golden Globes, the BAFTA, and the Oscars, because the memory and the wow factor of what people have just experienced would still be fresh. It would still feel like it would be brand new. But the fact that they released it in early June, honestly, was kind of a bit of a disadvantage. Now, I could totally be wrong with all of my theories, but this is my opinion into why I think The Boy and the Heron had that big win. How it managed to get that massive advantage over Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It is regarding the fact that it is from Hayao Miyazaki, an old legend. It is a completely original feature. It is not a sequel or a follow-up or anything. And in North America, it was released at the end of the year, very close to award season. So that is honestly my opinion and my thoughts on the whole situation with The Boy and the Heron winning it. And honestly, and speaking of my opinion, am I happy that The Boy and the Heron won? Honestly, yeah. Like I've stated before, I am very happy of all the nominations. I honestly think it is such a great list, and I honestly would not have gone and changed a thing. And I feel like I would actually be happy with whoever would actually go and win, even if it would be something like Elemental or Robot Dreams. Now, would The Boy and the Heron be my personal pick? Honestly, no. I was honestly, like, if I were to go and choose who would win Best Animated Feature, I would have easily gone with Nimona. Even pick Nimona before Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But still, even though that didn't happen, I still think The Boy and the Heron is a fantastic feature. And yes, it definitely earned the Oscar on that one. All right, so with that said, now I would like to go into the chat wall. And now I would like to ask you all, what do you think about The Boy and the Heron winning Best Animated Feature? Now, this time around, I know you all have a lot to say on this one. So, if you have any thoughts about it, was that your pick for Best Animated Feature? Let me know what you think. In fact, I'm going to go and do a poll on Twitch also to go and ask you, just to go and make that interesting as well. Just want to go and write, do you think The Boy and the Heron deserved the win. So I'll just go and write down yes, and then I'll write down no, and then we could go and create the poll. So let's see where we got. And in the meantime, let me go and see what the chat wall has to say. All right, so let's see what we got here. A hand-drawn animated movie won Best Animated Feature after a stop-motion movie won Best Animated Feature. Let's hope this is a sign that the tide is finally turning against CGI. While I was hoping Elemental would win, The Boy and the Heron arguably deserved the award more so... Sorry, I think I lost a little bit of my track. The Boy and the Heron arguably deserved the award more. Plus, I'm glad Across the Spider-Verse lost after Into the Spider-Verse stole the Oscar from Incredibles 2. That and The Boy and the Heron wasn't made with the animation equivalent of a sweatshop labor. Yeah, that is true. I mean, that's also like a massive win right there. You know, the fact that, like, because of the whole controversy related to Across the Spider-Verse, and especially with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, at least, you know, it's like a safe bet to know, like, well, you know, like, it feels like a little bit of karma that the way that they have treated animators, that they just don't deserve, like the fact that they completely disrespect the animators and in a way completely disrespect animation itself. Lord and Miller do not deserve the Oscar. In fact, I would even put in a hot take. Wish deserves to win the awards more so than Lord and Miller. Maybe not over Across the Spider-Verse, but definitely over Lord and Miller. So let's see. While I prefer both Spider-Verse and Nimona, The Boy and the Heron more than deserves its win. It's a beautiful movie with a great cast and one of the most inventive scripts of the year. I do find it a little jarring that Miyazaki didn't show up, but still this win is a major W. As for my yearly next year on the Oscars prediction, maybe Inside Out 2? Unless the Academy wants to be a bunch of maniacs and give it to Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. Oh my, yeah, oh god, yeah. You know, just to say, you know what, screw you. Here you go, Megamind. This is to make things up for not giving it to, you know, this is to make things up for being overshadowed by Gru and the Minions. Alright, let's see what we got here. Although I will say Spider-Verse had my vote, I'm not at all upset. But I'm not at all upset that The Boy and the Heron took home the win. Not only was it this is it the first win for Studio Ghibli since Spirited Away, but also the first hand-drawn animated film since, could be wrong on that, please come at me. For me, Spider-Verse was gold, Nimona was silver, The Boy and the Heron was bronze. Still haven't seen it yet, but now I should. Oh, absolutely. Like, if you haven't seen The Boy and the Heron, you absolutely should do so. It is a fantastic feature. And also, just want to give you all a heads up that apparently, according to the votes on Twitch, you all have said that 82% of you who did vote, that apparently, yes, The Boy and the Heron did deserve to have the win. All right, so let's see, what else do we have here? And also, just to go and mention, if you want to be corrected, no, you are actually right. This is the second time now that not only an anime won an Oscar, but this is the second time that a hand-drawn movie won for Best Animated Feature, with the first being Spirited Away. Let's see what we have here. A massive congratulations to Miyazaki himself and his producer, Toshio Suzuki. From out of retirement to no promotion in Japan to Oscar winner. I think this film did had a long journey. Now currently Pete Docter and Hayao Miyazaki are both tied up for the most award wins in modern animation. Yes, I did count Miyazaki's honorary Oscar. Ah, that explains it. As usual with him, he didn't show up to pick up his Oscar, and I respect that a lot. But I did hear his statement about his win. It's on YouTube somewhere. Honestly, I don't know about Hayao Miyazaki himself. I know Toshio Suzuki actually did put out a statement in regards to the win, but honestly, I would have to go and check if Hayao Miyazaki said something. Alright, let's see, what else do we have here? While I am definitely absolutely happy that The Boy and the Heron won Best Animated Feature, it really was disappointing that Hayao Miyazaki wasn't there to accept. However, with all due respect to the people involved with Spider-Verse, as much as I love this movie, a part of me is glad that it didn't win because of Phil Lord and Chris Miller do not deserve to be awarded for the way they abused their animators. Definitely. I've already said my piece on that, so at least we got that covered. Let's see. Oh dear, we don't have a lot of time left. I just looked at my time and like, holy crap, okay. Anyways, congratulations to Hayao Miyazaki and the team at Studio Ghibli for winning Best Animated Feature again after Spirited Away. After more than 2 decades, we finally saw an anime film, or a 2D animated film, getting Oscars this year. Hayao Miyazaki sure had a hard time drawing stuff on paper for The Boy and the Heron. Despite being so old, he's going to work on another animated film, and we are not sure if we're going to see him retire anytime soon. Oh, he ain't retiring. I think it's safe to say it ain't happening. Like, honestly, he's going to be drawing, he's going to keep on drawing until he passed away, and even at that, his ghost is still going to be directing animated features. All right, I think I'll read one more comment, and then we're going to go on to, or 2 more comments, and then we will go on to our next break. Let's see now. Congrats to Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki for this major win. Even if I haven't seen the movie yet, and I would have preferred Spider-Verse to win, it's still great to see an animated film that is not for the US to get this recognition, which rarely happens. Either way, I wouldn't mind if either The Boy and the Heron or Spider-Verse won the Oscar. If this will be Miyazaki's last movie that he make, then it's good to know that he went out with a bang. Good luck to next year's competitors. All right. As previously stated, my preferred short film was not even nominated, and I have not seen any of the others, so I didn't have anything to say about them. As for the choice of movie, okay, I'm not judging who won. It's more that I'm not an anime guy. My choices preferred Nimona and Elemental or even Wish. Also, forget Spider-Verse, 1 win is enough, but I'm not complaining. I heard it's great. Also, heck, it is the first time in a while that not only a non-US film, but a 2D movie won over the mainstream. That is definitely true. And I did hear about like the whole commotion that there are, of course, you would usually get those, you know, those raging animation fanboys who would say Spider-Verse won, and even the voice of Miles Morales himself, Shamik Moore, said that Spider-Verse was robbed. But then he did get some backlash, and he did actually apologize for his behavior, so at least, like, that situation was taken care of.